Hello, friends. We've made it as far as chapter 6, after which there is only the bibliography and two postscripts left of the translation. So I shall now share the text of chapter 6 and read it. Here we go. All right, so chapter 6, the transformation of Joi and the invasion of East Asia. Joi no tenkan to Higashi Asia no shinryaku. From the joy of immediate revocation of the treaties to the closure of the port of Yokohama, Sokuji no hayaku joi kara Yokohama Sako e. I have discussed joi, expulsionism, in the Bakumatsu period from the point of view of thought and theory, and also from that of its realization. During the Edo period, Edo Jidai, the ideology of joi was fomented, josei sareta, and at the moment of the commercial treaties, Tsusho Joyaku, all at once it was sublimated into the use of force, Jitsuryoku Koshi ni Shokashi, and during the Bunkyu period, February the 19th, 1861 to February 20th, 1864, reached its zenith, Saiseiki. For Japanese of the same period, there was a shared understanding that the national policy, kokuzei, i.e. the state of the polity, kokutai no arikata, and foreign policy, external policy, Taigai Hoshin, was joi. And there was also a common recognition, Kyotsu no Ninshiki, that the future goal was the founding of a nation based on East Asian expulsionist thought, Higashi Ajiateki Kai Shiso, as exemplified by the Chinese Empire, Chuka Teikoku. However, there was a clash between those who wanted to adopt realistic measures, accepting the commercial treaties for the time being, and carrying out the arming of Japan from the profits of those treaties, and those who wanted immediately to revoke the present treaties and advocated the conclusion of equal commercial treaties. In concrete terms, it was between the proclamation of the Imperial Edict, Chokumei, called the Muninen Uchiharai Rei, and the Shogunal Edict, Taimei, called the Shurai Uchiharai Rei. Through the two conflicting government edicts, Seirei Nito, our country of Japan, Waga Kuni, fell into a situation which was the brink of civil war, Nairan Sunzen. It was a critical situation which might afford an opening for foreign countries to take advantage. Gaikoku ni tsukeiru suki wo atai kanenai kikiteki na josei. The radical courtiers, Teishin Gekito, who advocated joi in the form of immediate revocation of the treaties, Sokuji no Hayaku, were secretaries and officials for national affairs, Kokuji Sansei Yoriudo, led by Sanjo Sanetomi, 1837 to 1891. They conspired with the Choshu clan, Choshu Han to Kettakushi, in order to put pressure on the Bakufu to carry out short-term expulsion of foreigners, Sokuji Joi, and sought to get Emperor Komei Tenno, to lead the expulsion of foreigners, Joi Shinsei. The coup d'etat of August the 18th, Hachigatsu 18 no Seihen, was a crackdown on this force by the emperor, high courtiers such as Nakagawa no Miya and the Satsuma and Aizu clans. With regard to the realization of joi after this, what kind of changes occurred? In the first place, starting with Emperor Komei Tenno, because the court in fact desired the immediate revocation of the treaties, even after the coup d'etat, Seihin, of August the 18th, 1863, it was very slow to adopt the new policy. Before the coup, because the court had disliked the influence of Sanjo Sanetomi and others who aimed at the restoration of imperial rule, Ose Fukko, and it had aimed at expulsion, Haiseki, it appeared to move from short-term expulsion, Sokuji Joi, to long-term expulsion, Mirai Joi. But in fact, there was no change, Fuhen, and it continued to urge the form of expulsion which was immediate revocation of the treaties, Sokuji no Hayaku Joi, on the Bakufu. However, after the coup, Emperor Komei and Nakagawa no Miya were not in a strong position, Banjaku, and in order to win over to their faction the lords of powerful clans such as Shimazu Hisamitsu, 1817 to 1887, of Satsuma, and Matsudaira Shungaku, 1828 to 1890, of Fukui, who were seeking imperial sanction for the commercial treaties, they were obliged to meet them halfway. This was linked with the policy of the closure of the port of Yokohama Sako. By changing external policy from the immediate revocation of the treaties to the closure of the port of Yokohama, they were trying to compromise with Hisamitsu and the Bakufu. After the coup, regarding the establishment of a new national policy, Kokuzei no Juritsu, and how the Choshu clan was to be punished, Choshu Han Shobun no Hoho, the Bakkaku, consisting of the shogun Iemochi, Yoshinobu and others, and Shimazu Hisamitsu, Matsudaira Shungaku, Date Munenari, 1818 to 1892, and other lords all went up to Kyoto, and as the imperial court, Chosei Sangyo, held imperial council meetings to discuss matters. However, Yoshinobu and Hisamitsu came into sharp conflict, and the system quickly collapsed. In April 1864, Genji I, the court entrusted all aspects of government, shosei, to the shogunate and demanded that it take appropriate measures, tekisetsu na sochi, with regard to the closure of the port of Yokohama, the punishment of the Choshu clan, training for maritime defense, kaibo genshu, falling prices, bukka teiraku, and inspiring the confidence of the people, jinshin ante. The entrusting of political power to the shogunate, taisei inin, was established as national policy, and for the time being, foreign external policy became the realization of the closure of the port of Yokohama. The central government, Chuo Seikyoku, was entrusted to the so-called one ruling power, Ichikaiso Seiryoku, a council consisting of Prince Asahiko Nakagawa no Miya and Nijo Nariyuki, 1816 to 1878, whose links with Hitotsubashi Yoshinobu, 1837 to 1913, who was head of the imperial palace, Kinri Goshue Sotoku, and commander-in-chief for the defense of Osaka Bay, Sekkai Bogyo Shiki, were strengthened, and the protector of Kyoto and Aizu clansman Matsudaira Katamori. The Kuana clan daimyo Matsudaira Sadaaki, 1847 to 1908, who was appointed Kyoto Shoshidai in April, was added to this list. And this is the last shogun, image number 22, Hitotsubashi or Tokugawa Keiki or Yoshinobu. Died in 1913. Imperial sanction is granted to the commercial treaties. Tsusho joyoku ni chokkyo ga oriru. However, the closure of the port of Yokohama was not an easy matter. The Bakufu had already, at the end of the previous year, 1863, Bunkyu 3, sent negotiators, Dampan Shisetsu, to Western Europe, Sei-o, but of course it was a difficult thing to realize, and furthermore, what was worse, in August 1864, Genji I, the combined fleet of 4 nations, Britain, America, France, and the Netherlands, bombarded Shimonoseki, and the Choshu clan suffered a second crushing defeat, Kampai, after the Kinmon incident, Kinmon no Hen, in Kyoto in the same year. During the peace negotiations, Kowa Kosho, Takasugi Shinsaku asserted that since the Choshu clan had only executed joi, which was the policy of the shogunate, Bakufu, the responsibility for the indemnity, compensation, baisho, lay with the Bakufu. The result was that payment of the huge indemnity of $3 million was put on the Bakufu, so with regard to joi, the Bakufu was increasingly hard-pressed. Immediately after the Shimonoseki War, the ministers, Koshi, of the 4 allied nations complained to the Bakufu about the absurdity of closing Yokohama port and pressed for imperial sanction for the treaties, Joyaku Chokkyo. Then in May 1865, KO1, when Sir Harry Parkes, 1828 to 1885, was appointed the new British minister, seizing the opportunity when the shogun Iemochi was in Osaka for the subjugation of Choshu Seibatsu, the 4 ministers, escorted by 9 warships, appeared on September 16th in the sea off Hyogo, later Kobe, and began to apply pressure to the shogunate and the court. The Bakufu was dismayed, robai, by the sudden show of military, that is naval force, gunjiteki na ji kodo. On September 23rd, they sent the elder Abe Masato, 1828 to 1887, to negotiate, but the ministers demanded imperial sanction of the treaties and the opening of Hyogo port. They also proposed to negotiate directly with the court. Then, because they felt under pressure that the ministers would not hesitate to start a war, kaisen mo jisanai, Abe and one more elder named Matsumai Takahiro, 1829 to 1866, strongly advocated the opening of the port of Hyogo, and without consulting the court in advance, chote e no nemawashi o sezu, on September 25th, they decided that the port would be opened. Even though it was to avoid a war, senso kaihi to wa ie, disrespecting the court in this way was surely a move lacking in political astuteness. On the other hand, the shogun, Iemochi, asked Hitotsubashi Yoshinobu to go down to Osaka and entrusted Yoshinobu, who feared the worsening of relations between the court and the shogunate, with the task of petitioning for imperial sanction of the treaties, Chokkyo Sosei. For this purpose, he obtained 10 days' grace, deferment, yuyo, from the ministers, and immediately requested imperial sanction, but the court strongly criticized the Bakufu for its arbitrary decision, dokudan, to open the ports, and even ordered that Abe and Matsumai be deprived of their official rank, kai hakudatsu, and be placed under house arrest, kinshin. With regard to the rare and unprecedented event of the court directly interfering in the personnel matters of the shogunate, everyone from the Bakkaku, leaders of the shogunate, downwards was amazed, and they unjustly suspected jasuishita, a conspiracy, kakusaku, between Yoshinobu and the court. The backlash, hampatsu, to this state of affairs was that the shogun suddenly, on October 1st, reported to the emperor, Somon, that he was resigning and would hand over his post to Yoshinobu. On October 3rd, he began returning to the east, i.e. Edo. However, of course, the court would not permit this, and Yoshinobu desperately persuaded him until Iemochi changed his mind, honishita. This sequence of events seems to have been buried in history, rekishi ni umoreta kan ga aru. But regarding Joi and the commercial treaties, it was a drama which shook the nation. And then the Emperor Kome Tenno, who had so strongly advocated Joi, seeing how furiously Shishifunjin, Yoshinobu, worked to obtain the imperial sanction, felt that this time there was nothing for it, and at last on October 5th he gave his permission. It was probably a heartbreaking decision, dancho, and a great burden for him. On the other hand, he did not permit the opening of the port of Hyogo. This was Emperor Kome's last opposition, and in May 1867, KO3, imperial sanction was given for the port to be opened. But by that time, neither Emperor Kome nor Iemochi were alive. In this way, the joy of the Bakumatsu period came to an end. Precisely because the commercial treaties had been sanctioned by the emperor, theoretically joy was eliminated as national policy. However, at this stage, there was no possibility of it being realized. However, the pedigree, keifu, of the Chinese Empire as East Asian expulsionist thought, in other words, joy as a philosophy, continued after this time as an intellectual inheritance of the Japanese. The curse of joy in the Bakumatsu period, Bakumatsu no joy no jubaku. The history of the Bakumatsu until now has almost always been described as being structured around a conflict between two opposing elements: respect the emperor and expel the barbarians versus the union of court and shogunate, Sonno Joi versus Kobu Gattai. However, viewed through that lens, some readers may have had difficulty in understanding why those two parties confronted each other and fought a life and death struggle and the process behind it. In this book, I have presented the reality of the general expulsionism of the Japanese people, Nihonjin so Joi, throughout the Edo period, and by understanding the essential point of conflict in the political dispute of the Bakumatsu, which was between the two concepts of long-term expulsionism, Mirai Joi, and short-term expulsionism, Sokuji Joi, I hope to have unlocked, literally thawed, hyokai, little by little, the complicated and mysterious history of the Bakumatsu. In other words, the Bakumatsu, with its repeated bloody political conflict, cannot be understood from the viewpoint hitherto propounded by historians of respect the emperor, and expel the barbarians versus the union of court and shogunate. These concepts had no influence on the Japanese people. To approve the commercial treaties or reject them, to postpone expulsion of the foreigners until the nation was fully armed, or not to wait until then, it was on these differences in opinion that the repeated political disputes of the period turned. These events caused the crisis of a civil war, Nairan no Kiki, and the possibility developed that Japan would become a colony, Shokuminchika no Kanose. The leaders of Japan at that time were well aware of this, and the conflict of the Bakumatsu period was also a political dispute on how to avoid civil war and colonization. In this way, the Bakumatsu revolved on the wheel of Joi. Indeed, Bakumatsu and Joi were one and the same thing. Bakumatsu equal Joi. Bakumatsu equals Joi. Finally, let us take a look at the afterimage, or Nachbild in German, the Zan-e, produced by expulsionism in the Bakumatsu period, Bakumatsu no Joi in Japan thereafter. The Meiji state realized policies of modernization such as the abolition of feudal domains and establishment of prefectures, Haihan Chiken, land reform, Chiso Kaisei, equality of the four classes, Shimin Byodo, conscription, Cho Heisei, etc., and made efforts to create a wealthy country and strong army, Fukoku Kyohei, and promote industry, Shokusan Kogyo. After the Meiji Restoration, Meiji Ishin, in only 20 years or so, Japan climbed to the top, being the only advanced nation-state, Senshin Kokka, in East Asia. Through the Sino-Japanese War, 1894 to 1895, and the Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905, the ascent continued until, in 1910, Meiji 43, through the annexation of Korea, Nikkan Heigo, Japan obtained a tributary country, Choko Koku, paying tribute to the emperor. This was achieved about 40 years after the restoration. Japan became the only imperialist nation of East Asia, and having joined the club of the great powers, Rekkyo no Nakama-iri, her next ambition was, starting with China, to make all of East Asia and further all the countries of Southeast Asia into tributary countries. In other words, growing from a small empire of Eastern barbarians, Toi no Shōtei-koku, or a Japanese-style empire of Oriental barbarians, Nihongata Kai-Teikoku, to a great empire of East Asia, Toa no Dai-Teikoku, was indeed her final goal, which she achieved. But you know the result of that. The unprecedented Great War, 1941 to 1945, Mizou no Taisen, was the end product of the curse or spell of expulsionism in the Bakumatsu period, Bakumatsu no Joi no Jubaku. Okay, well, after this, we have the bibliography, which I will go through slowly like this. You can pause the video if you wish to take a closer look at these. I won't read all of these out. Books and treatises, or Rombun, essays. Okay, we're almost through those, finished those. And I think after that, we might as well continue and read the postscripts, which will be the end. So here's the first postscript of the book as first published in, I think, 2010. Postscript. When I, the author of this book, was an elementary, or in the UK, primary school student in the 40s of the Showa era, 1965 to 1974, I loved to listen to the stories about his war experiences of my grandfather, who was sent to serve as a soldier in Manchuria, Manchu. He passed away about 15 years ago in the mid-1990s. Most of them were tales of the hardships of repatriation, hikiage ni matsuwaru kurobanashi, but he sometimes let slip things about actions which would make Japanese soldiers want to cover their ears, and which I concentrated on as a would-be future author, historian. However, sensing my interest, he usually broke off the conversation, saying, "Japanese did really terrible things to Chinese and Korean people. I will not say more about this." I repeatedly asked questions like, "Did you really think you could win?" To which he replied with regret, "I will admit I had vague doubts. Usu usu wa do kanato. Yet I believed that in the end, Japan, literally the land of the gods, Shinshu, would probably win. But what was the real shame was that we were not able to realize Joi for His Imperial Majesty, Heika no Tamini." At that time, NHK was broadcasting a long-running historical drama series entitled Katsukaishu, Taiga Dorama Katsukaishu. For me, as my eyes were beginning to open to the Bakumatsu, the use of the striking word joi, expulsionism, which my grandfather had used, was a surprise. Thereafter, a major theme of my work became the question why the joi of the Bakumatsu had cast such a long shadow right up to the Pacific War, 1941 to 1945 Taiheiyo Senso. Presently, the author's main research field is the Satsuma clan, Satsuma Han, and its daimyo Shimazu Hisamitsu, 1817 to 1887. But together with this, I investigate the recognition of the external in the modern history of Japan, Nihon Kingendai Shi ni okeru Taigai Ninshiki Ron. This book focuses mainly on the Bakumatsu and is the first publication of the results of my research in this area to the world. It is an unconventional history of the late Edo era and asks about the theory of joi, how it was formed and how it was executed in order to be realized. Confronted by the gaiatsu, external pressure, of Europe and America, Obe, in the Bakumatsu, the concept of joi was divided into large expulsion, daijoi, and small expulsion, shojoi, and mainly in the Bunkyu period, it divided the country and reaped the whirlwind of a major political conflict, Daiseiso wo makiokoshita. Within that time frame, I attempted to explain the state of joi in Western Japan, Saigoku, and the problems arising from it, and the Choyo Maru incident became a strongly felt dominant theme, omoi ire no tsuyoi tema. In the first place, I began with research into the Choshu clan, and at the time my topics were Yoshida Toshimaro, 1841 to 1864, and the Choyo Maru incident, Choyo Maru Jiken. On this occasion, being in a position to refer to the Choyo Maru incident was an unexpected pleasure, bogai no yorokobi, for me. I am secretly proud, hisoka ni jifu, that in this book I have been able to tell the unknown story of joi in the Bakumatsu period. Shirarezaru Bakumatsu Joi-shi. At last, this book is drawing to a close, but before it does, I must express my deepest and most sincere gratitude to three benefactors, onjin. Mr. Jun Shozawa Jun of Kodansha Publishing Company, who gave his understanding for this difficult topic, provided accurate advice and unstinting effort towards publication. Next is Mr. Yasuda Kyoto of Sanensha Publishing Company. Literally, it's a Three Monkeys company. Without his help, this book and many others of the author's manuscripts would never have seen the light of day, and I cannot thank him enough. If he had not met him by chance, the evaluation of the author as a researcher would probably have been quite different. Finally, I thank my dear wife, Nobuko. She has worked unstintingly on proofreading, including this book, and during this time has tolerated my self-indulgences, watashi no wagamama, and encouraged me. Apart from this, I have received various words of advice, and I thank all of the people who gave it for their kindness, and so I close this book. So there's something about the three wise monkeys, a note which I added. Seeing no evil, hearing no evil, and speaking no evil. Akihiro Machida Akihiro, August 2010. And then the postscript to the recent Kodansha pocketbook edition, Gakujutsu Bunkoban no Ato ga ki. In 2010, Joi no Bakumatsu-shi, the history of the expulsion of foreigners at the end of the Tokugawa shogunate, was published by Kodansha Gendai Shinsho, and that is already 12 years ago. Thankfully, since then, it has been reprinted, and a digital version, Kindle ebook, has also been produced, and the book has been loved by many readers. I was very surprised, but also delighted that it was put on a reading list prior to entering university for successful candidates in the entrance examination for recommended candidates, Suisen Nyushi. In the subsequent 12 years, the author's life underwent a major turning point when his job description changed from university administrator, daigaku shokuin, to university professor, daigaku kyoin. There is no doubt that this book also contributed to that transformation. I flatter myself that on becoming a tenured academic, my research deepened significantly. Kakudan ni shinka shita. The result was the publication of 3 more books: Global Bakumatsu Shi, Global History of the Bakumatsu, published Soshisha 2015, Sacho Domeiron, The Alliance Between Satsuma and Choshu, Jimbun Shoin 2018, and Shinsetsu Sakamoto Ryoma, A New Theory About Sakamoto Ryoma, Shueisha International 2019. On the other hand, I began to be concerned about part of Joi no Bakumatsu Shi, this book, which was still being read. In particular, there was a section of chapter 3 which contained fatal flaws that were beginning to stand out. For example, the process of formation of expulsionist thought, Joi Shiso no Keisei Kate, was vaguely described, and there was only a shallow understanding of the relationship between Sakoku, chained country, isolationism, and Kaikin, the maritime ban. Above all, it did not go in its interpretation beyond the stereotype of Sakamoto Ryoma and adhered to the so-called legend of Ryoma, Ryoma Densetsu, in its content. A typical example was the treatment of Kameyama Shachu. My present opinion deviates greatly from the Kameyama Shachu did not exist and has developed into an a priori positive assumption of its existence. As this meant I was continuing to give incorrect information to the readers, I was always troubled by this. However, the commercial reality was harsh. The book, published by Shinsho, was sold out, but there was no prospect of a reprint, and time passed with my feeling the burden of embarrassment. But at the end of 2021, I received an invitation from the Kodansha academic book editorial team, Kodansha Gakujutsu Tosho Henshu Chim, to re-register the book to the academic library, Gakujutsu Bunko, of the same publishing house. It was absolutely a bolt from the blue, Seiten no Hekireki. For me, as author, the opportunity to publish an enlarged and revised edition was the chance of a lifetime, Senzai Ichigu, and I was literally overjoyed. I want to take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to the editor, Mr. Itsuki Kurihara. 12 years have passed since Joi no Bakumatsu Shi was published, so has the misleading and unhelpful schema, Zushiki, mentioned in the book of respect the emperor and expel the barbarians versus the union of court and shogunate, Son no Joi versus Kobugattai, been overcome. Unfortunately, the history of the Bakumatsu, late Edo period, is still discussed and misunderstood in these terms, and working backwards, calculating retrospectively Gyakusan, from the result, it is stated that a faction to overthrow the shogunate, Tobakuha, already existed in the Bunkyu period, 1861 to 1864. Furthermore, so-called conspiracy theories, imbosetsu, have become increasingly rampant, such as that the mastermind, puppeteer Wa-puller Kuromaku, behind the assassination of Sakamoto Ryoma, was Saigo Takamori, even though this completely disregards historical fact as found in historical documents. It is extremely regrettable that such assertions have crept into the statements of historians. The main cause that Bakumatsu history is hard to understand is the nonsensical juxtaposition of Son no Joi versus Kobugattai, and the attempt to make anything and everything comprehensible by imprisoning it within this framework, ignoring historical facts for the sake of entertainment and relying on commercially driven conspiracy theories. There's a note by me on Kuromaku, puppeteer. In this book, I have attempted an understanding of the history of the Bakumatsu late Edo period, using Joi, expulsionism, as the key word. But for us living in the present era, in many cases we dislike this concept because we tend to imagine extreme actions such as the bombardment of foreign ships and the murder of foreigners. The representative clan for this is Choshu, with its swarm of imperial loyalists, Ishushita Son no Shishi, and support for its expulsionist activities, Joi Kodo, from Sanjo Sanetomi, 1837 to 1891, and other extreme court nobles, Kagekina Teishin. The dominant perception is that it was precisely this force which comprised the Son no Joi, revere the emperor, expel the barbarians faction. Japanese people at that time revered the emperor without exception, and apart from some extremist imperial loyalists, they supported the union of court and shogunate,公武合体. Moreover, it was no exaggeration to say that almost all Japanese were joy expulsionists desiring to expel the foreigners. However, at that time among Japanese people, there was a great variation in understanding and perception of what joy actually meant. In brief, there were clear differences in the timing and policy, jiki ya hosaku, of expulsionist activities. Again, whether the commercial treaties should be recognized or not was a major topic when considering the definition of joy. Before the conclusion of the commercial treaties, Tsusho Joyaku, joy was the national policy, kokuzei, an external or foreign policy, taigai seiryaku, intended to support the idea of Sakoku, closed country. Regarding the driving away of foreign ships, it could either be done without hesitation, chucho sezu, in other words, expelling them without a second thought, or by providing food and fuel peacefully and gently driving them out. The Bakufu tended to choose alternately between these strategies depending on the current world situation and particularly the situation in East Asia. Either way, they did not allow foreigners to enter Japan or reside there, so there was no change in the policy of Sakoku. However, after the conclusion in 1858 of the commercial treaties opening the country, kaikoku, joy assumed substantial form, jishitsuka suru. Since joy meant the maintenance of Sakoku, in the first place it was necessary to exclude foreigners from the soil of Japan. For that purpose, the violence of assassination was not rejected, so many imperial loyalists aimed to return to that simple form of Sakoku. On the other hand, the leadership, statesman Issei Shaso of the Choshu clan also affirmed expulsionist actions, but their main purpose was the revocation or cancellation, haki, of the commercial treaties then in force, which Emperor Komei had rejected. And after that, they wanted to explore the possibility, mosaku, of the conclusion of equal commercial treaties which the emperor could approve or ratify. Through the existence of the emperor, it became possible for Japan to be an empire and a land of the gods, Shinshu. Since the emperor did not recognize the treaties, the mainstream of the Choshu clan, Choshu-han Yoro, were quite unable to recognize them. But from world trends, they had enough international understanding, kokusaisei, to realize that Japan could not maintain Sakoku isolation on its own. In addition, after realizing the sloganized twin goals of Fukoku Kyohei, a wealthy country with a strong army, Japan dreamed of becoming a world leader. The Choshu clan pushed the Bakufu into a corner and tried to get it to cancel the treaties, in this way intensifying its activities towards joy. This confrontation developed into a war between the Bakufu and Choshu, Bakucho Senso. In the end, the narrative which the Choshu clan had outlined of concluding new treaties vanished like dispersing clouds, unsan musho. The Bakufu shogunate feared that revocation of the commercial treaties would lead to war with the great powers of Europe and America and subsequent colonization, set its course towards conclusion of the treaties with the aim of achieving Fukoku Kyohei through the profits gained from trade. By positively opening up the country, Kaikoku, avoiding war and building up national strength above that of Europe and America, it awaited the opportunity of someday soaring high in the world, izure sekai ni yuhi suru kikai. Seen in this way, both the Bakufu and the Choshu clan aimed at Fukoku Kyohei through trade, and their ultimate goal was the same, namely to construct a Japanese state without peer in the world, sekai ni kantaru nihon kokka. However, the Bakufu affirmed the treaties already concluded and aimed at joy after building up the country's wealth and military strength, so-called long-term expulsionism, mirai joy. On the other hand, the Choshu clan denied the treaties currently in force and persisted in expulsionist actions in the present time to nullify them, so-called immediate expulsionism, sokuji joy. The confrontation of these two opposing viewpoints continued until the commercial treaties received imperial ratification, Chokkyo, in 1865, KO1. The preceding Bunkyu period, 1861 to 1864, was nothing other than immediate expulsion versus long-term expulsion. The political strife thereafter saw the authority of the Bakufu weakening, together with heightened expectations of participation in national politics, kokusei sankaku. All the political powers, kakusei ryoku, were seeking a form of government in which they could participate, and the Bakufu moved towards a process of attempting to obstruct them. If we take a bird's eye view, Fukan, of the late Edo period, 1853 to 1868, Bakumatsu, from the critical vantage point, axis, jiku, of Joi, it certainly becomes easier to understand the political history, seijishi. This experiment, kokuromi, has still not progressed very far and is not an easy one. However, I am aware from my pride, dignity, kyoji, as a historian, that this is exactly why I must be unsparing in my efforts. Sono doryoku wa oshinde wa naranai. From now on, for as long as I live and breathe, I shall continue with my efforts, experiment, to make the history of the Bakumatsu comprehensible. Machida Akihiro, March the 17th, 2022. And that is the end of the book. So I shall just stop the share. Thank you if you've stayed with me until this point. And I'll see you again somewhere soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.